Hi there. Welcome to Small Business Coffee Break, the video series where we take a few minutes to work on your business, not just in it. Today we talk about independent contractors, exempt, full-time, part-time. How do we classify employees? With Jeffrey Daitz of Hall Booth Smith PC. Jeffrey has over 20 years of experience in employment and labor law, so grab a cup of coffee and let's get into it. Now we see a lot of misclassification for independent contractors, and I use air quotes with that is because basically everybody in Florida apparently is a there's the perception that they're an independent contractor if you pay them using and report to the IRS using the Form 1099 at the end of the year. That's what makes an independent contractor.
Right.
Is that true for employment law?
So no. It is not. It's kind of just like companies come out there. I have dealt with clients in the past that they've said, all right, well, I'm getting audited. I don't understand what I did wrong. I look at their payroll and I say, how is it you can have 50 employees working? How are all 50 of your employees managers and exempt? Well, this way I don't have to pay them overtime. But it's impossible. You can't have every single person here as a managerial exempt employee. You're going to have rank and file. So the misclassification is a problem right there. Independent contractor, each state has varying laws, but generally there's a test. Sometimes it's a 3-part, a 4-part, a 5, or a 6-part test of what actually qualifies somebody as an independent contractor. If companies are putting people out there and classifying them as independent contractors, I would say have your employment counsel take a quick review of your job description. Let them see whether the person passes the 4, 5, 3, or whatever 6-point test it might be to truly qualify as an independent contractor, and realize if that person does not qualify, they're an employee.
And a lot of this, I think, goes back to some of what we were talking about even before with the employee handbook. It's the practice of what you're doing is important to keeping, to having a proper defense at the time of a situation. Like you were describing, it's like everybody can't possibly be a manager just because you want them to be exempt. That the classification system wasn't created for you to be able to or not to pay overtime. The classification system was created to provide proper employment practices, for corporations of a certain size and even sometimes not as big as we think. It's funny. A small business administration says that any business that has under 99 employees is a small business. If you take my 8-person shop, I think anything under 20 employees is a small business. So 20 to 80 seems huge to me.
Right. Yeah, and you'll see things right now as the minimum wage laws change, right? Mm-hmm. As the hourly wage rate goes up, what happens? This is affecting managers and business owners' profit margin. So what are they doing? They're looking to do ways of cutting back and saving, having to instead of paying overtime. So that's where they're creating more problems, because as they're trying to change with the times, it became that, would you have to offer health insurance? Well, hold on, if the person's not a full-time employee, then I can have an out. So what did some people do? In order to avoid having to give benefits, paid benefits, or health insurance, they said, well, it's only offered for full-time employees. So what they did is they ended up doubling their workforce, hiring more people, working fewer hours, thinking they can avoid having to pay and get benefits. Right. Same thing as the overtime laws and minimum wage rates change, same thing. Everybody's looking for a way out.
Right.
Sometimes that way out is actually going to cost you more in the end. So again, problematic solutions are out there. You just have to aggressively look into it. Again, the job description and the detailed nature of what the person's job duties are is critical, right? Doing it the right way. The problem is, in real estate, everybody used to say real estate is based upon what? Location, location, location. What is employment law? Documentation, documentation, documentation.
And to that point, that's the importance of having an employment counsel to be able to have, because some of these things are things we can do if we do them appropriately. So we just couldn't do them blanketly, but if we have appropriate counsel, we'll be able to, implement some of these things. It may cost slightly more than not having had anybody review it or just trying to, shoot from the hip, which is, at the end of the day, that's part of the problem. We were just talking about that the small business owner, when people ask what I do for a living, sometimes I say, well, it depends on what time of day you call me. 'cause sometimes I'm the janitor, sometimes, and every so often I actually get to work on insurance. But if, having someone who's an expert in that field guide me when I'm having the conversation as to whether or not there are pitfalls to doubling the size of my workforce in order to save on benefits.
Right.
What they are, where they are, and I can then help that profit margin stay as wide as I possibly can, and not be spending money on the back end on trying to, either paying fines, which is a big part of what we're talking about too, that we've mostly been dealing with the conversation of lawsuits and so on and so forth, and obviously cost out in litigation, because, our practices just weren't up to par. Let's keep the conversation going. Ask a question in the comments. If you'd like to contact Jeffrey or me, our contact information is also in the description. See you next week for another cup of coffee and more questions answered.